Brooke Logan swept into the sun-drenched living room of the beach house without a trace of hesitation, her gaze steely yet tempered by the profound relief that had settled in her chest. Only days ago, this very room had been the scene of terror and violence when Luna Nozawa's split-second vengeance had sent Steffi Forrester to the floor in a haze of blood and disbelief. Memories of shattering glass and echoing gunshots still clung to Brooke's mind like a grim shadow, but today there were no tremors in her hands, no stuttering breaths, only the hard-won knowledge that Steffi had survived, that the worst had not come to pass. Taylor Hayes followed close behind, her face weary but determined, offering a gentle nod to Brooke before turning her attention to Ridge Forrester, who stood by the arched window overlooking the Pacific with an expression that balanced gratitude, guilt, and that familiar, unspoken love he'd always harbored for Brooke. The air between them crackled with the weight of everything they'd endured: betrayals, secret alliances, heartache, the bitter taste of their own missteps. And yet here they were, united against the darkness that had threatened to sunder not just friendships but lives. Ridge closed the gap between them, laying a hand on Taylor's shoulder in a gesture that spoke volumes: laughter and tears, forgiveness and understanding, a vow to set aside the old wounds for the promise of a stronger future. Brooke, Taylor, and Ridge formed an unbroken line facing the setting sun, three souls bound by blood, love, and the iron resolve that when violence came knocking at their door, they would answer together, unwavering and undaunted. As the three friends and erstwhile rivals drew closer, Grace Buckingham appeared at the threshold, her expression a complex tapestry of relief, guilt, and resolve. In her slender hand she held her phone, screen aglow with the unmistakable confirmation they'd been waiting for: transfer complete. $1 million. That solitary message encapsulated so much fear that Liam's non-operable brain tumor might claim him, desperation that had driven Bill Spencer to bankroll an experimental treatment in secret, and Grace's own culpability in orchestrating the swift disbursement of funds to the Swiss clinic. She stepped into the room, her voice barely above a whisper as she showed the text to Brooke and Taylor, who exchanged quick, knowing glances before Ridge's brow furrowed in concern. "Grace, why did you need to send that now?" "Bill said he'd handle it," Taylor asked, her tone gentle but probing, as if the million-dollar transaction itself was a secret that needed unearthing. Grace's cheeks burned with shame and relief in equal measure. "Because he thought it was already covered," she muttered, twisting the phone cord through her fingers. "He told the doctor the funds were on their way, and I couldn't let anything delay Liam's treatment. But I never asked why he needed exactly this amount this moment." The room fell silent but for the distant crash of waves on the shore, each person wrestling with the knowledge that Bill's paternal devotion, to defy death itself for his grandson, had triggered a seismic ripple through Spencer Publications. Brooke reached out to place her hand over Grace's, offering reassurance. "You did the right thing. We'll get to the bottom of any mix-ups later. Right now, Liam needs every second we can give him." Ridge nodded, steeling himself for the battles yet to come, both in the boardroom and in the corridors of the hospital where Bill stationed himself as protector and provider. Moments later, Brooke's phone buzzed insistently with the news they'd all been dreading and hoping for in equal measure: the MRI results for young Liam. Grace and Taylor clustered around Brooke as she unlocked the message, Ridge's hand finding hers and squeezing tight. "Your son's scan results are in," the text read. "Please see Dr. Anderson immediately." Brooke's pulse thundered in her ears as she dialed the Swiss clinic's direct line, her voice trembling but determined. Bill Spencer's image appeared on the screen, his sharp features drawn tight with anxiety, an unlit cigarette dangling loosely between his fingers, suit jacket tossed aside in favor of the white coat that marked him as both grandfather and guardian of hope. "Did the MRI show a miracle?" Brooke's words spilled out, urgent and breathless. Bill's gaze flicked to his wristwatch before returning to the camera with a solemn nod. "It's not the clear-cut answer we wanted," he said, swallowing hard. "The tumor has responded to treatment, but there are still areas of concern. We've bought time, Brooke, but we're not out of the woods yet. Dr. Anderson recommends we proceed with the second phase of the trial protocol immediately." Relief and dread warred in Brooke's chest, relief that Liam's body had shown signs of fighting back, dread that the next steps might be even riskier, uncharted territory teeming with unknown consequences. She closed her eyes, drawing on every ounce of strength, every well of faith she'd managed to cultivate since this nightmare began. "Tell him I'm on my way," she whispered. "I'll be there in an hour." She looked up at Ridge, Taylor, and Grace, her voice firm as steel. "He's fighting. We're with him, every step of the way." Ridge pressed a kiss to her forehead, Taylor clasped her hand in solidarity, and Grace managed a small, hopeful smile, the weight of her secret momentarily lifted by the promise of Liam's tenuous victory. In that crucible of fear and unwavering devotion, the trio pledged not only to protect Steffi and defend one another against past betrayals, but also to stand as a single force for the life of an innocent child. Proof that when love demands a price, they would pay it in full, hearts intertwined, ready for whatever storm lay ahead. Finn's heart pounded like a war drum in his chest as he sat in the dimly lit records room, fluorescent lights flickering overhead while he and Bridget hovered over the glowing computer screen that held Liam's MRI results. The grainy black and white images should have shown a tumor shrinking under the revolutionary treatment, but instead, the scans revealed something sinister. The edges of the lesion drawn in by hand, density levels tweaked, dates falsified to mask the fact that the tumor was unchanged, or worse, growing. Bridget's breath caught in her throat, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through archived files, comparing the authentic DICOM files to the manipulated printouts hastily slipped into Liam's chart. The revelation was a bolt of lightning. Someone in the highest echelons of the hospital's hierarchy had been doctoring patient records for years, and now a child's life hung in the balance. "They knew," Bridget whispered, voice tight with fury and dread. "They lied to us all." Finn's jaw clenched. The man responsible, Dr. Reynolds, the esteemed chief of medicine whose sterling reputation had shielded him from scrutiny, had overseen the clinical trial that had drawn global attention, funneling funds and prestige to the hospital even as he quietly manipulated outcomes to secure further grants and private donations. The collusion between the administration and outside shadow investors had turned healing into a commodity and innocent patients into pawns. Now, exposed at last, the truth would shock the medical community, but exposing it carried risks that could shatter two promising careers and land them behind bars for fraud, malpractice, and conspiracy. Yet Finn and Bridget, bound by love for Liam and haunted by the responsibility that came with their roles as doctors, resolved that failure was not an option. They spent hours in secret plotting their next move. The plan was audacious. Stage a clandestine surgery on Liam under the pretext of a Phase 1 clinical trial, an experimental procedure combining emerging gene-silencing techniques with targeted immunotherapy that promised unprecedented results but had never passed human testing. Publicly, the hospital would announce the trial's suspension pending review. In reality, Finn and Bridget would perform the operation in a secure wing of the facility, away from prying eyes and official records, using an unregistered protocol code and borrowing equipment from a deserted research lab. Every moment of preparation felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm of potential ruin. Finn forged new consent forms, encrypting them under dummy patient identifiers. Bridget requisitioned specialty surgical kits and backdated supply orders. They enlisted a handful of trusted nurses and a scrub tech sworn to secrecy, each acutely aware that a single whisper could tip the scales against them. As the night before the surgery burned away, They rehearsed every step under the cold glare of the operating room lights, their practiced movements tinged with the adrenaline of defying authority. On the morning of the operation, Finn stood at the door of the makeshift OR, clad in scrubs that felt heavier than armor. Bridget joined him, her eyes shining with unspoken fear and resolve. Liam, frail but miraculously lucid, smiled up at them from the gurney, too young to grasp the full enormity of his parents' conspiracy, but brave enough to squeeze their hands. "I'm ready," he whispered. In that tender moment, the stakes crystallized. If they succeeded, they would not only save Liam's life, but dismantle Dr. Reynolds' empire of deceit, exposing a network that had endangered countless others. If they failed, if the tumor rebounded or complications arose, they would lose medical licenses, face criminal charges, and become pariahs in the profession they had dedicated their lives to. Finn swallowed hard, stepping inside to lower the surgical lights, his voice steady as he assured Liam, "We're with you every step of the way." The hours that followed were a blur of precision and tension. Finn navigated through brain tissue with microscopic tools, guided by real-time imaging on an unregistered portable MRI scanner that Bridget had smuggled in. Each incision felt like a gamble. Each pulse of the cautery pen echoed the heartbeat of justice they sought. Bridget monitored vitals, her gloved hands steady even as her mind raced through contingencies, sterility breaches, unexpected hemorrhage, the arrival of an unforeseen supervisor on a routine check. At one point, the door hissed open as an anesthesiologist unconnected to the trial walked in. Finn froze, Bridget's breath caught in her throat, but their scrub tech intercepted him with a rambling question about a non-existent emergency in recovery. And the man retreated, oblivious to the drama unfolding beyond the sterile drape. It was a narrow escape, a testament to their careful planning and a stark reminder that the margin for error was vanishingly small. When at last the final suture was placed and the tumor cord delivered to a discreetly labeled specimen jar for off-the-books analysis, relief washed over them like a tidal wave. But there was no time to savor triumph. They needed to confirm whether the excised tissue truly contained viable tumor cells or whether the treatment had indeed rendered it inert. Bridget slipped away to centrifuge the sample in the hidden research annex, while Finn closed the patient. Liam's skull cap replaced, scalp sealed, and transferred him to a recovery bed in a secluded pediatric ICU ward. The tension remained taut until Bridget re-emerged, eyes wide, brandishing slides that under fluorescent examination revealed the telltale signs: necrosis at the core of the mass, immune cells ravaged by the therapy. Markers that indicated the tumor was no longer malignant. It was success, and with that microscopic victory came the ammunition they needed. Over the next 48 hours, as Liam recovered under their unofficial watch, Finn and Bridget compiled the dossier that would bring down Dr. Reynolds, digital logs of altered DICOM files, internal emails that hinted at directives to doctor results, financial records tying the chief of medicine to offshore accounts seeded by pharmaceutical lobbyists. They sent anonymized tips to the medical board, major news outlets, and the hospital's legal department, ensuring multiple angles of exposure that no single entity could suppress. Meanwhile, Liam's postoperative scans, authentic and unvarnished, were quietly funneled into the official record, demonstrating the genuine efficacy of the experimental protocol and forcing the institution to confront the truth. By the time Dr. Reynolds stormed into the pediatric ICU, demanding to know why an unapproved trial had taken place, the evidence was already in motion, a torrent too powerful to stem. Authorities arrived within hours, sealing his office and seizing servers. The hospital's board convened an emergency session, pledging transparency and promising to overhaul patient safety protocols. In the aftermath, as the dust settled on a scandal that rocked the medical world, Finn and Bridget stood together beside Liam's bedside, holding hands and watching him awaken with a curious smile. They had gambled everything, licenses, livelihoods, reputations, to save his life and expose a rot they could no longer abide. Now, with the corrupt chief of medicine in custody and the trial results validated, they faced the daunting task of rebuilding trust in a system they loved, but whose betrayal had cut to the bone. Yet in that moment, as Liam reached out to them with childlike wonder at a world that seemed brighter than before, they knew the risk had been worth it. For justice to prevail, some truths must be uncovered in the shadows, and some heroes must dare to operate beyond the lines, guided only by conscience and the unwavering belief that a single life, especially that of an innocent child, was worth any sacrifice. And so, as the first rays of dawn filtered through the ICU windows, the three of them, doctor, mother, and son, found solace in a new beginning, forged in secrecy, born of courage and destined to shine a light on the darkest corners of medicine for generations to come.